This is the first paragraph, chapter 1 of IQ. Isaiah's crib looked like every other house on the block, except the lawn was cut even, the paint was fresh, and the entrance was a little unusual. That's an okay sentence. But let me tell you what went into that. My intention here was to give the reader a sense of place, like right now. Because this is a crime novel. I don't want to do a whole big description of the hood. So it's Isaiah's crib, not his house. And if your house stands out because the lawn is cut even, you are not in a good neighborhood. And there's a second part of that sentence. The entrance was a little unusual. That's an invitation to the next sentence. What's so unusual? The security screen was made from the same heavy-duty mesh they used to cage in crackheads and bank robbers at the Long Beach police station. Now, you might be getting a feeling of where this is going because the references are crackheads, bank robbers, and police station. The front door was covered with a thin walnut veneer, but underneath was a 20-gauge steel core set in a cold steel frame with a pick-proof, bump-proof, drill-proof medical double-cylinder high-security Maxim deadbolt. Now, why did I focus on the door? For one, I didn't want to describe the whole house. I picked a relevant detail, right? And what I'm trying to do is bring the reader in and ask the question, who needs a door like that? More importantly, who lives on the other side of that door? Now, there's I refer to a specific lock, the Medico, because I want to give a note of authenticity, of credibility to that door. I don't want to just say a big deadbolt. And then there is the way that it's written. Set in a cold steel frame with a pick-proof, bump-proof, drill-proof, Medico double-cylinder high-security Maxim deadbolt. That is my cadence. That is my rhythm. That is what I hear when I write. So I take a great deal of trouble to make my writing sound like my writing. So, you need some serious power tools to get past all that, and even if you did, there was no telling what you'd be into. Word was, the place was booby-trapped. Now, why would anybody think the place was booby-trapped? So again, I'm inviting you in. I'm trying to make you curious. A cherry 8-year-old Audi S4 was parked in the driveway. It was a small, plain car in dark gray with a big V8 and sports suspension. The neighborhood kids were always yelling at Isaiah to put some rims on that whip. Okay, it was cherry, but it's 8 years old. Isaiah takes care of his possessions, but he's not rich. Now, this is a neighborhood where people value fancy cars, but Isaiah's car is small and dark gray. So, I'm trying to separate him from his environment. I'm trying to tell you this guy is different. The neighborhood kids were always yelling at Isaiah to put them rims on his whip. So, the cultural expectation is that he will have rims on his whip, but he doesn't have them. Again, I'm trying to separate him out from his environment. So all of that thinking went into that first paragraph. And so it's writing professionally is about the individual skills you've been learning about, like characterization and dialogue and those things. It's also the ability to integrate them and bring them and make them an expertise. When a race car driver drives a race car, he's not thinking about separate skills. He's not thinking about gear shift, clutch, steering wheel. He just drives a damn car. That's expertise. I grew up in South Central LA, in an area that was full of crime and gangs and all the inherent problems of the hood. But as an experience, it wasn't any different than what millions of people go through every day. My grandparents lived in the area because it was close to Little Tokyo. And my family lived with them because we were just getting by. My grandparents were very old world. They spoke almost no English. They were stern, they were formal, and very traditional. My grandfather collected samurai swords, and he had a Japanese garden. My grandmother had a koi pond. And she wore these beautiful silk kimonos around the house, and they treated me like somebody else's cat. You know what I mean? Like, they couldn't actually kill me, but they didn't have to be nice to me either. My parents aspired to get out of the hood and be Brady Bunch mainstream, and that's what they wanted for their kids, me and my brothers. But we adapted to the neighborhood. Our friends were black, so we co-opted their speech, style, attitudes, musical tastes. So there was always this cultural, generational tension within the family, made more so by the fact that both my parents and my grandparents wanted us kids to have some connection to our own cultural heritage, which never really turned out the way they had hoped. The net result of all of this was that I was culturally all over the place. I wasn't black, I wasn't white. I felt way far from being Japanese. So through most of that time, I really felt like I didn't fit in. I didn't belong anywhere. And I think that's why I was so drawn to the original Sherlock Holmes. Here's a guy like me, doesn't fit in, doesn't belong, but Sherlock had an identity. You know, he was confident. If he faced problems, he could overcome them with just his intelligence. That was a big idea for me, because it meant there was a way for a kid like me to face his world and not be afraid. And when it came time to write a book, all of this came together virtually by itself, and Sherlock in the Hood was born. Oh, I was a failed screenwriter. I always wanted to write, you know, but it's like everybody always wants to write. When I started with screenplays because I thought it was easy, but it's remarkably difficult to write a good one. I had a friend, an acquaintance who was an agent. I wrote exactly 12 crappy screenplays. And he would send them back with a note, "This sucks. This is intensely boring. No one will want to see this." So on the 13th one, I wrote a decent screenplay. It sold to Disney, and I started to work. I worked fairly frequently. I worked for most of the major studios, and I did assignments and rewrites and that kind of stuff. Nothing ever got made. And if nothing else, I have a work ethic. I'd knock myself out on a script, and then the head of the studio would get fired, or the star wants too much money, or some Hollywood reason. So I burned out. I could not do it anymore. I would open the screenplay program and get physically repulsed. So I called my agent. I said, "Well, I'm quitting." He didn't say anything. I mean, nobody really noticed. So I was depressed, like clinically depressed for a couple of years. If I wasn't a screenwriter, who was I? You know, so I went for long, soulful walks with my dog and felt incredibly sorry for myself. But at a certain point, you know, I had to pay the mortgage. And as I said, my only real skill is writing. So I decided to write a novel. Walter Mosley and Elmore Leonard are my gods. You know, I read all of their books multiple times, and the original Sherlock Holmes. 52 stories, 4 novels. I read them multiple times before I left middle school. Those were the basis. And then along the way, there have been all kinds of others, the same writers that you appreciate, that I've taken things from them. I've just shoplifted all kinds of things from other writers. I guess the writer that I reread the most is John le Carré. Spy novels are just crime novels in another country. And I love his precision. He writes beautifully, but with such precision. And George Smiley's my guy. George Smiley is my guy. And he's really another form of Isaiah. They bought the manuscript in 2015, and they just now got a pilot written. It's a good pilot. It's really good. It was written by a guy named Matt Carnahan, who came from The House of Lies, writer-producer from that show. And there are a bunch of other writers involved. But they just now finished the pilot. So I don't know if anybody's thinking about casting. I myself, I don't pay attention to it. You know, I have a day job now. I know what that business is like. They're going to do what they're going to do, with or without me. So, you know, just send me the check, I'll be fine. It was always going to be a series. Assuming I got the first one published, it was always going to be a series. I wanted to write a series where the characters grew from novel to novel. I didn't want to write the same book twice. And so if you've read the books, you'll see how Isaiah is completely alone in the second book, in the first book. In the second, he starts to reach out. In the third, he has a girlfriend. And Dodson starts out completely self-involved, and he gets closer to Isaiah. They become partners, and then Dodson has a kid. And so I want to see where that goes, because I don't know. I don't know where that goes. But I'm fascinated with the prospect. I don't know what Deronda's going to do. I have no idea. So you and I will both find out at the same time. It occurred to me that there is this interrelationship between rewriting and voice. You know, that elusive quality of originality, writing style, and perspective. Over the course of rewriting, I scrutinize every paragraph over and over and over again. This certainly isn't exclusive to me. And while I'm doing this, I'm asking myself two questions. One is, what's wrong with this? The second is, how do I make it better? Oh, is this word the best word? You know, is there a more precise word, a more vivid word? You know, does this paragraph work? You know, does it need to be here? Did I meet my writing objective in this paragraph? You know, are the transitions in and out of this paragraph smooth? You know, how do I make this particular scene pop? Because it's not popping now. You know, does this character need more detail? What should those details be? So, over the course of these multiple rewrites, I'm making hundreds and hundreds of choices. And I think those choices, cumulatively, are my voice, because no one else would make the same choices that I do. A very smart friend of mine said, no rigor, no voice. And I think that's absolutely true. I think you have to be at least that relentless to find your voice. Now, I'm going to go find mine. I'll see you somewhere down the road.